All right, my name is David Porter. I am a student in Dr. Phil Hamilton's Researching CNU Topics course at Christopher Newport University. My oral report today is on the history of the fraternity and sorority life at CNU. Fraternity and sorority life began at CNC, as it was known then, in 1970, about the same time the school moved from 2-year to 4-year status. There were 2 local organizations at the very beginning, one fraternity and one sorority. I will come back to that in a moment because Greeks in general, at every college, not just at CNU, Greeks have provided a social outlet, a home away of home of sorts for many people. And Greek life is not for everybody, but for those people who choose to do so and find it to their liking, they find a great outlet for social activity, philanthropy, and as well as leadership. I mean, as many Fortune 500 CEOs and politicians are members of Greek organizations. However, Greeks have come under many stereotypes from pop culture and have been perpetuated by non-Greeks. There have been numerous movies and TV shows concerning Greeks that portray the fraternity and sorority system in a rather negative light. Those include, of course, National Lampoon's Animal House, the 1978 hit starring John Belushi, the Revenge of the Nerds series from 1984 to 1992, and the current TV series on ABC Family Greek. Non-Greeks also perpetuate ideas of racism, sexism, elitism, and a notion that Greeks buy their friends. I will prove in this paper this report that those are not true. All right, back into the 1970s, there was a local fraternity and a local sorority at the CNC campus here in Midtown Newport News. The fraternity was referred to as Chi Psi Omega, which are the last 3 letters of the Greek alphabet. They, unlike the many organizations that came after it, were more of an animal house. They held very wild parties in the old student center, which is now no longer with us. And they also were, in 1974, quite noted for streaking on the Great Lawn. It made the front cover of the Captain's Log, the student newspaper at CNU. In 1975, Chi Psi Omega would cease operations after a rather wild, destructive dance in the old Ratcliffe Gym, in which several portions of one of the men's bathrooms in the arena was damaged by partygoers. They would be closed down after this. They were never mentioned in the Captain's Log, so that would create the assumption. In 1971, Pi Kappa Sigma, a sorority, opened. They, unlike Chi Psi Omega, were very tame. They were more philanthropy and sisterhood based. They would hold almost weekly bake sales amongst the sisters and the new member classes, and they would have sisterhood trips to Nag's Head, among other places, and they acted like a tame sorority. They were not being pejorative, but they were acting as leaders, role models, if you will. The need for another male social organization arose towards the end of the 70s, with Chi Psi Omega gone for several years. So Pi Kappa Sigma opened in the fall of '78 a group called the Little Brothers of Pi Kappa Sigma. This organization would hosted a group of men who wanted to tie closely to the sorority and work together with it. However, by the end of 1978, they would have branched off of their own, forming another local fraternity called Kappa Nu, which is not to be confused with a historically Jewish fraternity called Kappa Nu that had previously merged into Zeta Beta Tau. Kappa Nu had donated a scoreboard to the soccer team, by having car washes and bake sales, and they had raised quite a good deal of money for the fledgling program at CNC, which had the previous year gained its formal independence from William and Mary. Kappa Nu would become a pretty dominant organization in the late 1970s and early 1980s, and in April of 1980 took the pledge to become a colony of Sigma Pi, bringing a national organization to campus for the first time. They would receive their charter the following year after a very large successful rush. Pi Kappa Sigma would also be inspired to go national, and finally would, after numerous more years as a local, and would become affiliated with Gamma Phi Beta in 1988. That chapter is still thriving at CNU today. Also in the early 1980s, CNC's population was largely African American. Two organizations from the National Pan-Hellenic Council, the NPHC, which is a union of 9 historically African American fraternities and sororities, opened their doors here to chapters at CNC that are still going today. Alpha Kappa Alpha opened earlier in 1980. Delta Sigma Theta would join them in 1983. Both organizations contributed to the ideas of sisterhood and to multiculturalism on CNC's campus. As the 1980s progressed, Sigma Tau Gamma opened in 1984, received their charter in 1987, and began making contributions rather early on campus, such as Casino Night for the Peninsula Food Bank, and Swingathon, not Swingathon, that's another one, the Bikeathon. They'd hold a Bikeathon for the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation. And numerous Sigma Pi, Pi Kappa Sigma, later Gamma Phi Beta, Alpha Kappa Alpha, and Delta Sigma Theta realized by the mid-1980s the whole Animal House image was not what they wanted. So they began to move away from that. However, 2 organizations opened in the 1980s that were very much reinforcing of the stereotypes of Greek life. One was referred to as Nu Phi Tai, the other was called I Kappa Keg. These 2 organizations reinforced the image that Delta House had emblazoned into the minds of many non-Greeks several years earlier by hosting wet t-shirt contests, luscious leg contests, wet buns contests for both the men and the women, and many numerous other loud, boisterous, debaucherous events. Again, largely due to the scene of social responsibility at CNU, or CNC at the time. Neither of the organizations lasted longer than 2 years and were both rather quickly forgotten. As the 1990s began, CNC expanded graduate and distance learning programs and gained university status. Several new fraternities and sororities would open between 1990 and 1995. Phi Mu, Pi Lambda Phi, Phi Beta Sigma, Zeta Phi Beta, Pi Kappa Phi, and Alpha Phi. These organizations, coupled with the older ones that had already been established in the 70s and 80s, continued to build strong brother and sister bonds. They would hold events for themselves. They would hold large-scale public philanthropy events. And after Hurricane Andrew had ravaged the southeast in 1992, Phi Mu, Alpha Kappa Alpha, Pi Kappa Phi, numerous other Greeks had worked together in various events, raising money and supplies to provide relief to the people who had lost everything in the wake of the storm. Also, in 1991, during Operation Desert Storm, the chapter of Gamma Phi Beta, the continuation of Pi Kappa Sigma, had made care packages for the troops that would be shipped with the postage paid by the USO. They shipped little care packages